my first time filming the intro at the end of the video. Like, I've already filmed the huge chunk of me baking. It turned out fine. It turned out well, actually. Like, I don't think I'm gonna mind eating this banana bread for breakfast every day for the next 14 days probably. Hey, roll this page, and today I decided that I wanted to revive kind of an old series that I used to do called Baking Book Babbles, where I would like bake something and talk about a book, and whatever I baked was sort of related to the book itself. And I made banana bread, mostly because I had overripe bananas, which I explain later on. Also, bread and pita are like hand in hand. I was not about to make sourdough because one, I don't have starter, and two, I've never made bread before without a bread maker, like an actual machine that does it for me. So that was not gonna happen, so I made banana bread. I just felt like I had so many thoughts after finishing Mockingjay yesterday that I wanted to film a video about it. So here we are. This video is later than I expected it to be because I did want to put it up on Saturday, but work got in the way. I had an event all day on Saturday that I had to do, so I wasn't around, and so this video is going up next week, the week after it was supposed to, so that's whatever. I'm not holding myself accountable for that kind of stuff. We're all just doing our best in these times of quarantine. So that's enough of an introduction from future Paige. I'm gonna go back to past Paige and let her like talk about the book and basically mess up this recipe, so thank God it still turned out well. I somehow forgot. No, I won't even say. I won't spoil that for you. You'll see. So let's do that. So I don't know how this is gonna work. This is gonna be showing you what I'm doing very unnaturally right here. This is so that you can see my face while I'm talking about things. We'll see if I'm as good at multitasking as I think I am. Probably I'm not, because I have to bake and also talk about the Hunger Games at the same time somehow. Also, the audio is not gonna probably be great. It's very echoey in here. My fridge is going to be doing its own grumblies. You can hear my neighbors. This is what we're dealing with, and this is how we're going to do things. I guess I should tell you guys what I'm making, even though you probably already saw it in the B-roll clip at the beginning, but I am doing banana bread because our grocery people gave us 12 million extra bananas, and now we have these. So we'll start with setting the oven to 350. How does one start this? I guess I should start with mashing the bananas. That seems like the smartest choice. I have to turn this on too. You guys are just getting to see all the behind the scenes of me trying to figure out my life. I thought it was going to be interesting going into the Hunger Games as an adult because I first read this series when I was 15, I realize now. I thought I was 16. I'm just gonna casually hold these here. I thought I was 16 when I first read it, but then I realized the timeline doesn't work out from where I was living. So I was probably 15 years old or just turned 16. And so reading it as an adult, I sort of expected to like notice different things in it because I have more experience. I'm more worldly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Little did I know there was going to be a pandemic. Little throwaway lines started to matter more to me, especially Mockingjay, because I read the first two before all of this stuff happened. I read them in January and February before things got really serious in North America. Like when I was reading Mockingjay, there's a line about District 13 having a pandemic underground, which felt very no me gusta because the idea of being underground and not really having an escape, and also one of their alarms was for like self-isolation within District 13, which was like, okay. And also Katniss has a throwaway line when they're in District 8 in the hospital, and she's like, this doesn't feel like a good idea because any kind of illness would spread rapidly. And I was like, normally I'd read that and wouldn't think anything of it, but right now I'm like, oh, okay. So, oh my sweet lord, I'm just gonna bump into this all the time while I'm talking to you. I spent the entirety of yesterday, which was Sunday, Easter, reading Mockingjay and then watching both films of the adaptations, which was emotionally exhausting. I have been like sleeping really late recently, like 3 a.m., 2 a.m. is usually when I go to bed. And nope, last night, 11 p.m., I was like, okay, I have 50 more minutes of this film. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay awake. I was planning to film this actual setup last night after I finished watching both movies. I didn't realize how long that was gonna take. Also, I was not realizing how emotionally exhausted I was gonna be and mentally exhausted from watching those two films. I like the series as a whole. I do think it still stands up a full decade later. I think that the writing is still fantastic. Suzanne Collins is the fucking queen of three-act structure. That is probably why the adaptations did so, like, they were done so well, is because she wrote in a way that made it easy to adapt. They did have to make changes, like adding the different perspectives, obviously. It did make sense when I was watching Mockingjay, the decision that they made to divide it. Same with Harry Potter, how there is two very different moods to the book. There's a lot of Katniss waiting around in different places, which I feel is what they covered in the first part, and the second part was more of just focusing on the final, like the 76 Hunger Games, as Finnick called it. Overall, I feel like because she wrote in such a strict three-act structure, like they use her books as examples when you're learning writing outlines, as like the Hunger Games specifically is the perfect example of how to hit each beat that you're supposed to hit in a three-act structure. That's what made her book so enjoyable, is it hits the story narratives that we're so used to in like Western society. That looks mashed to me. I'm not gonna get into the plot of it all because if you're here, I'm assuming you've already watched The Hunger Games or read the books. It's the humanity of Katniss that really made this series for me this time around, because you're following one person and seeing how their life is irrevocably changed because of the decisions of those around them who want to stay in power or want to gain power for themselves. She wasn't a special chosen one that we often get in dystopia. She was randomly picked in the first film / book, randomly picked from a jar, and it was her decisions and her stubbornness and her loyalty to the people who showed kindness to her, like Cinna and Rue. Those motives that she has, like, really grounded you in this world, because it never felt like it strayed too far into like the kind of like dystopia future where it's so far removed that you can't relate to it in any way, because this is particularly now something you could see like, oh, I could totally see how something like this would happen. I could see the sort of people who would make something like this happen for their benefits. I've been talking to you for a very long time and I need to actually bake, so I'm going to figure out what else I need in this recipe. Okay, so like as an audience, we're given the belief that Katniss could probably survive the Hunger Games. We're shown that she can fight. She has skills with a bow and arrow, which seems solid, seems legit, and she has motive. She has her sister, she wants to get back to her family, she has to take care of them. So you really believe that she could probably survive the Hunger Games. It's when you see her unwavering, like, not goodness, because she does make some selfish choices sometimes, but her unwavering loyalty to those around her who are kind to her, that's what really made her a great character for me. And I don't know if it's because I also watched Itaewon Class really recently, which is a series all about a guy who has unwavering good morals, and people around him don't have the same morals, and it's him butting heads against them and refusing to stoop down to their level, which I feel like a lot of characters around Katniss do. Like Gale, for example, stoops down to Cinna's level quite a bit, but I think it's because of that unwavering just goodness to her, in that sense that she has really good morals, really helped me stay grounded with that character and really enjoy her more than I remembered enjoying her. Like, she is probably one of my favorite fictional characters at this given moment in 2020. Okay, give me a minute to focus on getting this shit together. This is a lot of butter. She was a lot more vulnerable in the books, which I didn't realize because I've watched the films multiple times, but I've only read the books the one time when I was really young, and I read them all in one weekend. And so I didn't remember her vulnerability. Like, I didn't remember her being as emotional as she is in the books. Like, she very much has emotions, and she gets upset when people think that she doesn't, because she portrays herself like she has to stay strong for like the cameras, for the people around her. She doesn't want to be viewed as weak. But we know she has emotions, and like there's a moment in Mockingjay where she hears Gale and Peeta talking, which is so 2010s to have the two love interests talking while she's supposed to be sleeping. That's very Twilight, for example. Gale says that Katniss will choose between the two of them who she won't be able to survive without, and she finds a big problem in that. She's like, wow, he really thinks like I had no emotion, that I'm just like cold-hearted. And so I feel like that was one thing I missed in the adaptations of the films, was Katniss being more vulnerable, being more human. Like, she cries a lot in the first book, which I totally didn't, because we have Jennifer Lawrence's portrayal of her, and I was talking to Maureen about it, and she made a good point, like, that's internal monologue. We don't get to see it in the film because there's no real way to portray it on camera in an interesting way, and so we miss some of that. And Katniss in the films is great. She's a very different Katniss. I appreciate both of them. I just leaned more toward the book Katniss because she has weaknesses in a way that the film Katniss, especially in the third film, I don't know if it's because the director was trying to portray the fact that Katniss is supposed to be seen as infallible as the Mockingjay, and they made those changes as a result to sort of mirror that situation, but it felt like she has a lot of like instability in what's real and what isn't, which mirrors Peeta's whole problem with the later half of the book. And I felt like they took that out, like they completely erased that. Basically, there's the beginning of the first film where she's whispering to herself and she's like, okay, I'm Katniss, let's start with something easy, I'm Katniss, I'm from District 12. There is no District 12, and like that's the only time we get to see something that is really a struggle for her throughout the entire book. Because in the film, she does have these emotional outbursts when she sees Peeta, but it doesn't hit in the same way, just because they haven't built her up to be a vulnerable person who forces herself to be strong. Katniss is one of the few people in this series that never forgets
that the people across from her in the war are still people, because like I mentioned, Gale is very quick to view them as like just enemy. They're all enemies. He has this one throwaway line where he says, it doesn't matter if they're just mocking floors in like the mountain in District 2, they're helping the enemy, so if they have to die, I'm okay with it. And that was like the moment where like that was the end of it for Gale for me. I was like, she also becomes very disillusioned by the war at that point, because they're all cheering as the moon goes down, and she's like, this isn't good. And like that's the same thought process she has when she's in the games, because she never forgot that she was killing other children. And the other characters, that means my oven is preheated and I am not ready. And it's the other characters who are also really human that I really gravitate toward, like Boggs. Don't know how I forgot about him. Or like, yeah, by the time the final film came around, I had completely forgotten about who Boggs was because I hadn't reread the books. But rereading this, I was like, oh my god, Boggs sees Katniss as like the teenage girl she is, and when he says she deserves to have a long life just because she's like earned it from all the things she's been through. Whew. And then he dies like 5 seconds later. I was so annoyed. Like, it was like all those little people that still solve humanity, and other people, also Peeta, obviously. What's like, is like neutral good? He's like the one neutral good person in the series. I also think the nuance that Suzanne Collins has for, where did I didn't take out X. This is taking me like twice as long as it would normally take me to make. The nuance of Suzanne Collins' portrayal of like the two opposing sides, District 13 and the Capitol. Usually when we get to teen dystopian, YA dystopian, we see a very like binary, I'm always dropping eggshells because of these fucking eggs into everything I make because they're so hard. I'm just like salty right now. Like in YA, I feel like if I'm thinking of like a Insurgent, Divergent, I don't know why Insurgent was the first one that came to my brain. Like that kind of dystopian where there's an evil government, which also came out around the same time that Hunger Games was really popular. I feel like when and the Maze Runner is the other one I was forgetting about, okay. So when we get those kinds of YA dystopia novels, we're very used to seeing like the government is innately evil. There's no way to see like a good person working for that government. They're all bad. They're all just call it quits on all of them. Even like the brother of the main character in Divergent, like we're supposed to sympathize with him at some point because he turns onto the good side, but is he ever really on the good side? I don't know. I don't really remember that series. I don't even know why I'm bringing it up because it was not a great ending. I feel like Suzanne did it very, she added nuance to it. She gave us characters like Effie more in the films. Like I don't think they expected her to become such a fan favorite, but Elizabeth Banks' portrayal of her in films was great. Like, there's no way you come out of these films not liking Effie. But, like, the writers understood what Effie was supposed to be in the films versus in the books, where she literally disappears for the entirety of the third book and just reappears when Katniss is in the Capitol again. And also Cinna, who comes from the Capitol, but he is one of my favorite characters from the series, even though he's only in it briefly. Also, because Lenny Kravitz plays him, how could you not like that character? But we get these glimpses of, like, the good people who work for the Capitol. And I'm not gonna call Plutarch good, because in the book he is a fucking... there's another shell. Because in the book he's a fucking sketchball, and I hate him. But in the films, because of the actor, again, he becomes a more likable character that we can root for, or at least understand his motives. Like, the Capitol is objectively bad. There's no one saying that the Capitol is good. The way they oppress everybody in the districts is horrible, and they're exploiting them. They are slaves because they're providing all these goods to the Capitol, and they see the benefits for themselves. But we do get the people who are good within that system. And on the other side, we see people like Gale, who thinks that everybody deserves to die because they happen to be where they were born where they were. If they're a janitor, it doesn't matter, they should die because they're helping the Capitol by mopping floors. I still can't get over that. I'm like salty forever that was a thing. Also, this doesn't have like a quarter cup measuring, so I always just like guess. Probably not the best thing to do, but oh well. And Coin, who is supposed to be the emblem of everything that Snow is not, but ends up being exactly who Snow is, but wrapped in a prettier package with better messaging than Snow has. Especially rewatching this time, I feel like I was startled that as a teenager, it took me longer to realize what Katniss does, that Coin is kind of sketchy, and that whole, like, I think, especially because they gave them that, like, wartime chant, where it was like, hooah, hooah, like the army chant, I was like, oh, this is gross, this feels so bad, especially when they're doing the, like, they're blowing up the mountain, and they're cheering, like, that, oh, shivers, it was so good. When Snow tells Katniss that basically Coin steps back and let the Capitol and all the districts fight so that she could step into power, and you definitely see it, she gets sketchy. I don't know how, because the films make it very different. I don't know how much of it was Plutarch influencing her to act this way, to have her killed so that he could have the election that he wanted. Like, it very much makes it seem like that was part of his whole game in the movies. In the books, he does not seem as smart as movie Plutarch does. Like, this series was commenting on the pointlessness of war, which was very relevant and is still relevant, like, still to this day, but, like, particularly relevant at the time she would have been writing these books and then getting them published. It was the exploration of, like, class, and a ruling class that doesn't really care about the population and is only out for its own self-interest that stood out the most to me because of everything that's happening right now. I still have not stirred in this milk, so we're gonna do that real quick. We're gonna say that's mixed in, and we're gonna get vanilla. My favorite thing in baking is this. I never measured vanilla. I just accept it and throw it. So when I first consumed this series, I sort of took The Hunger Games as, like, an exploration of us as a society and, like, our gaudiness, the way we focus so much on our appearances, and it becomes ridiculous because I was seeing, like, us as the capital, more so than us as the district. And this, like, still to a certain extent does apply because we haven't quite gotten to the watching kids kill each other for entertainment side, but we do put people in these impossible situations for reality TV, disregarding completely how it's impacted previous people's mental health who've also been in a similar situation. But more so than that, it was the speech that Katniss gave in District 8 after the hospital had been bombed, when she, like, says that whole, why do we think they're going to treat us any differently? Why do we think they're going to treat us better? You know who they are. This is who they are. And that just, like, makes me think of our own governments and the way they've been responding to the pandemic. And, like, we're told time and time again they're supposed to work for the people, but when we're shown more than once, they do the opposite of what would be in the greatest interest of everybody. Why do we expect them to do any differently at this point? Why are we not just calling it quits, burning it down, and starting it over? I'm not going to get into the Trump of it all because it did a lot of that ruling class only does what's best for itself. Remind me of the 1% and the celebrities and how they're welling out right now at this time. Yeah. I'm not going to say it didn't remind me of that. Speaking of, like, evil governments and stuff, can we talk about, just give me a minute so I can be salty about Snow getting perspective in the new book, because I personally find it so unnecessary. Like, it isn't a stretch and a leap for a person to sort of surmise for themselves how somebody like him got into that position of power, because the world is primed for people like him to get into that position of power and for them to want to hold it no matter what. That was the most realistic fucking part of this series. And so the idea, like, I don't know what has given our society the need to humanize evil men. I don't get it. First the Joker, which was trying to do too much and then ended up doing nothing. And then this. I'm giving Suzanne the, like, benefit of the doubt because she has been gone for so long that I feel like she wouldn't just, like, pop out of nowhere if she didn't feel like she had a story that she needs to tell. But at the same time, I'm very cautious at the idea of, like, we should get this backstory, because Snow in the series is fine. Like, he perfectly does his job as the villain of the story. You were scared of him because he's so fucking smart and he understands how to manipulate people in a way that most people don't. Okay, I need to pour out this flour because I am sitting here just talking. The other problem that I had with this series was, of course, the representation, or lack of it, or the way it was, like, presented. I'm gonna pour this flour out real quickly, so just give me a sec to go off. I'm a lazy bitch, so I am not going to be measuring this properly or whisking it beforehand. I'm just gonna let it do its thing. I'm not gonna get into the whole people being upset that Rue is black, because she is very, very explicitly described as having afro hair and being black. Same with Thrush. He is also described as being black. So I don't get where that confusion came from, other than the fact that people are used to white being the default in all of these books. But more so, it was, like, some of the choices that they made, specifically in the first film, which I feel like the things I noticed in the first film definitely got better as the series went on. I don't know if somebody pointed out to them and they changed their ways. Some of the choices that Suzanne decided to make, like District 11 is the farming district, and it happens to be the district that has black people because Rue and Thrush come from that district. But in the film, they make, like, the majority of the people black, which is sort of felt kind of slavery-ish, like actual, like, plantation-y. Like, it did not feel great. Especially when, after Rue's death and they performed, like, they had the riot, seeing that, I had to, like, actually pause the film and take a step back and take 5 minutes for myself, because it very much felt like Black people are always the first to stand up to oppression and are the first to be punished for it, or most severely punished. And I don't think they did that intentionally, but it was there and it was coded, and that felt very, like, that hit me different, and that was back in January. And then also seeing the hospital scene in District 8 in Mockingjay, and most of them being people of color, and it being like a hospital that's overrun, that doesn't have the equipment it needs, and then all of them dying because of the Capitol was very, ooh, that hit. This series is also very painfully straight, and it's emblematic of its time, of course, but, like, there are things that you can't help but notice now, especially because you're getting more entertainment that isn't falling into these same pitfalls or doing so less often. If it isn't already obvious, I'm Team Peeta over Team Gale. Not that I'm, like, much Team anything, but Liam Hemsworth is very distracting as Gale. Like, every time he came on screen for each movie, I was, like, hit over the head again about, like, how pretty he is as a human. It took me out of the movie for a minute, like, without fail. As far as favorites go, my favorite book is Mockingjay. Hunger Games, like, the first book itself was actually really, really good too. So I don't think I have a favorite. I just don't really enjoy Catching Fire as much, because a lot of Catching Fire is you as a reader trying to figure out what is happening. Like, you're very confused along with Katniss, but because you already know, if you've read it before, what's happening, it takes a little bit of the enjoyment out of it. It's the same thing with Chamber of Secrets for me and Harry Potter. The mystery is already solved, so part of that book isn't as enjoyable for me anymore. But for films, Catching Fire is my favorite. I think it's because, like I said about the characters, it's so much more personal, and we are seeing these elements of Peeta and Katniss getting to know each other, especially on the train. Like, we get that whole montage of them, and I feel like it was those moments that really, like, made that adaptation for me. But overall, like, the adaptations were great. I think, like, everything stands the test of time so far. It's all great. It's, besides the things I said I didn't like, I enjoyed everything else about it. I was so busy talking that I forgot to put in the fucking bananas in banana bread. Please explain to me. I was like, why is the bread so, like, tough and not, like, where's the consistency? Oh my god, I'm fucking dumb. So I hope you enjoyed that experience of me baking and forgetting to put bananas in banana bread. I have nothing else that I want to say, because I spoke for 40 minutes baking that recipe, and I will talk to you guys later in another video. I'll see you when I see you. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you are, if you're baking, that all of your baking activities are going fine, and that you're not like me, and you don't forget the most important ingredient in your recipes. Talk to you guys later.